morning. My name is Hani Mittal, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of Locofy.ai. And I'm here to talk about Locofy's foundational design models today. We've all heard about large language models, and we love them as much as anyone else. But the problem that we are solving is not going to be solved by LLMs alone. And today I'll show you what large design models are capable of and how they can revolutionize front-end development and app development. A quick show of hands, actually. Are there any builders in the house, founders, product managers, engineers, designers, anyone who's built a product before? Quite a few. I saw some of you come to our booth yesterday. So I think the start of the project, this is something most of you will relate to. The start of the project, whether you're a founder and you've just made that big life decision to work on an exciting problem, or a product manager who's just spent months or quarters trying to get approval for a feature or a new product. The start of the project is the most exciting of all because you genuinely believe you can solve a big problem, and you believe you have an idea that can change the world or can have a big business impact. So start of the project starts very differently than most of the times the end of the project. But the wireframing stage is amazing because you have thoughts in your minds and you've done research, and that starts translating into a pen and paper or a simple whiteboard solution, and you start visualizing what the solution might look like. Goes to mock-ups, you bring in expert designers bring it to life even more, and you can start really feeling excited about getting that product in the hands of the users. And you want to do it as soon as possible. You've seen these designs, it looks like you have it, and you want to get it out to your users as quickly as possible. But then, as most of you I'm sure can relate, starts the iterations. You hand these designs over to your engineers. Engineers say it will be a month or 2 months or potentially more. If you're working with an agency, it could be even longer. You wait and you wait and you wait, and then at the end of the day, what you get is not. We've all been there. I don't think there's anyone who's built a product who can say, I started with something and within a month I had exactly what I wanted. And I think this always leaves product managers, founders in a dilemma on, should we now launch what we have, or should we go back and spend even more time and money? And oftentimes it could be a couple of millions of dollars, and for a startup it could be most of the money they've raised in the early days. Or for a large corporate, they've spent so much time that they often decide to kill this project. And by the end of the project, all your dreams and all the excitement is gone, right? And this happens on a regular basis. Any builder over here in the audience can, I'm sure, relate to this. And we've gone through that as well. But my co-founder and I, after building products for almost 10 years, 12 years almost together, we figured out a way to come out of this cycle and build products that started winning awards and started getting a lot of recognition. We built 3 startups before. All of them are doing really well. And then we realized that not many companies are able to solve this, and there has to be a solution forward. So this is where we thought about, how can we get these mock-ups to the live product as quickly as possible and as pixel perfect as possible. And that started, that was the sort of genesis of Locofy.ai. We started 3 years back in Singapore. And last year, we started building our design models when we realized even though there's a lot of excitement with LLMs don't solve this problem, and we have to build our own foundational models from scratch. So in a nutshell, what Locofy does is essentially takes your designs from Figma, Adobe XD, and more design tools are coming in the future. It respects your favorite public libraries, UI libraries if you have Material and Bootstrap. It also respects your own component library if you have built your own design system. And it converts it into code in just one click. So this is not the entire app, but it's the front-end React app or the React Native app. And the idea is that we automate the front end. We let the engineers work on the more complex back-end building and logic building process, and also go faster to the market. And we've pushed this code into GitHub, and there's a bunch of things you can do. The idea is to adapt and fit into your existing workflows and your existing tools. So maybe before we talk about large design models, I want to show you a very quick demo. It's a 40 seconds, video to show how Locofy looks and works. So that's the Airbnb-style mock-up. It's called localhost, looks perfect. You want to give it to your engineers. Engineers say, give me a few months, and that never happens. So Locofy is built as a plugin within Figma. All you have to do is select your design, click, and within 20 seconds, we give you pixel-perfect, developer-friendly, production-ready, oftentimes, code. You see the code at the bottom, and this on top is not the design. It is actually the React app rendered on the code that we generated on the fly. It's pixel perfect. It's exactly as the designer wanted it, so the designer can make sure that the end product is exactly what they had in mind and what they designed without the engineer writing any code. And it respects everything an engineer would do, right? It builds interactive elements. It finds components, so it's not like repeating code. It's modular in nature. It's responsive. It names the layers properly as well and gives you the foundation to save you months of time. And like any AI, it's not going to be perfect. But rather than spending months, you spend a day or two fixing or fine-tuning your code. And the more you do it, the better our AI becomes as well. The goal for us was very simple, to bring the joy back into developing products. And in the last decade, I think only tech companies were able to hire engineers. And in the last, I think, 4 to 5 years, it's become clear that there are just not enough engineers in the world, and universities will not produce engineers at a fast pace. And non-tech companies are now also getting into tech, and everyone wants to be a tech company. So how do we get the 60-odd million engineers in the world to solve all of the world's problems? And we believe that this can help to a large extent and bring the joy back in developing products. So a question we got asked a lot in the early days, and especially in the last 12 months, and yesterday at the booth, is why not use LLMs? Why not just put this design into ChatGPT or another LLM model and get the code? Because there's enough videos out there that claim that you can build apps on LLM, and you can. Certain apps you can, but not very design-heavy apps. And we did this test on Gemini. It doesn't even take a design as an input. Claude also doesn't do it. ChatGPT does. But that's the design on the left-hand side, and on the right-hand side is the code. It's not exactly what you had in mind. So ChatGPT and all the LLMs, we love them as much as anyone else, but they're very much trained on text and videos and images. Figma designs and Adobe designs are a different breed, and we believe LLMs and LDMs working together is the answer, not one or the other. Locofy, on the other hand, takes your designs, understands designs the same way as LLMs understand text, and converts it into code and a pixel-perfect prototype that you can verify immediately works exactly the way you want. So we believe that large language models are obviously trained on billions and trillions of text, books, research papers, posts, and LinkedIn, and all kinds of YouTube and audio content. But text is not the only way humans communicate, right? Like, we've been communicating with the designs and shapes and vectors for even longer, actually, for thousands of years. And today that translates into our websites and the things we interact with on a daily basis and apps. We just basically made sure that we understand the design of a designer and front-end engineer, and we train our models to understand designs the same way a designer or a front-end engineer or an app engineer would. So in a quick nutshell, how that one-click technology works and how our models work, it starts from the design. We take the Figma design. We essentially convert it into what we call as embeddings. So we take everything from text, image, node metadata. There's a lot more hidden information on your Figma designs that is not visible to your human eye. You tend to look at the Airbnb-style design, but on the left-hand side is the layers and the nodes and the metadata associated. That tells us a lot more than just the image or the text itself. So we convert it into a large file, which we call as embeddings, and that becomes the bedrock of doing these 5 or 6 steps that we believe are needed to get you pixel-perfect code. First step is Design Optimizer. The design on the middle looks perfect, but oftentimes the designs are not structured properly. There are unnecessary frames, unnecessary groups. The groups are done wrong, and garbage in and garbage out means that your design, while to the human eye it looks file, but when converted into code, will just not translate into any human readable code. So we go in and we essentially remove the unnecessary frames. We group things properly. We apply the best practices like Figma auto layout, constraints, padding, and then we make it ready for the next step, which is tagging. Tagging is a concept we introduced to go and scan your designs and find buttons, inputs, drop-downs, all the basic HTML tags, but also custom tags that appear everywhere from different libraries. So the way it works is we scan your design, we pass it a bunch of information, and we identify the logos, the text, date time pickers. And if you look at it in the very first row itself, there are 5 rectangles with an icon and text. But one of them is an autocomplete, 2 of them are date time pickers, 1 of them is a button, and the other one is just a text box. So they all essentially look the same, but they all behave differently. So we've trained our AI to understand the difference between them and to give you semantically correct code for that. Next is code components, because essentially, if you look at it, these are repeating elements. If we don't make a component out of it, it'll be 1,600 lines of code. We want to write 100 lines of code and reuse it 16 times. But then we also have to find out information like images, the hotel name, the price, the star rating, which is dynamic, which will be coming most likely from an API, so we convert that into props. And this way, enterprises and engineers can work with optimal code itself and can collaborate easily. Last but not the least, one of the biggest and the toughest to solve for is responsiveness. You design a beautiful website for your desktop experience, but then on mobile, it looks terrible. We've been working with this for 10, 15 years, and still till date, the best of the best front-end engineers often struggle to make a website responsive. They can often work with different sets of designs and different code bases, but to do it in the same code base is something only a few people that I know have been able to master. And it's not easy for any AI to also figure out because it's subjective. There's no real answer for how responsiveness should work. In some cases, a header on the top becomes a drop-down. In some cases, it becomes a slider. In some cases, the 16 images that you saw become a carousel. In some cases, they stack on top of each other. So that's the last thing that we work on. We apply auto layout, but then we also train our models on how different websites work and different components and UI libraries work, and give you your website not just for desktop, but also mobile and tablet. This also means your designers don't have to design for those platforms from scratch. And at the end of it, we do partner with some LLM providers, because on your Figma file, designers generally name the layers as frame 1, frame 2, frame 3. Especially in a startup, designers are always in a rush. Everyone's in a rush. We don't do things properly. But then those frame 1, frame 2, and frame 3 is essentially a hotel card or a button. So we pass some LLMs like Gemini and Claude this information, and we fine-tuned it to a way that we get the proper layer names that appear in the code itself, which makes it obviously a lot more useful. So at the end, in 20 seconds, all of this happens, and we give you the code and the preview, which is essentially your React app. You can take this code and add your logic to it. You can push it to GitHub and do CI/CD, and you can pull it into your VS Code through our extension as well. In the background, we run a bunch of techniques like vision transformers, image classification, YOLO, XGBoost, sequence to sequence. There is no simple answer that you just apply to a design and it gives you the answers, but different modules are using different techniques, and we are building this to a point where it can become just one unified model in the long run. And lastly, just want to talk to you about, we launched our design models only earlier this year. They're not accessible for any other, through APIs. We built it for our own use case, which is to convert designs into code, and it's currently consumed by us, but we're going to open it soon for partnerships as well. We will be scaling our design models now that we've figured out the answers. We're going to go from 100 million parameters to 2 billion by the end of the year. We are going to do the same for mobile apps also, bring it into one click. We will supercharge feature detection, because not everything is a HTML element, but things like headers, footers, carousel appear on multiple websites, and we don't think you should ever have to write code for that from scratch. And lastly, we are partnering with some LLM providers, because we believe that LLMs and LDMs working together can really revolutionize front-end and web and app development, because we convert designs to code, but LLMs understand code, and they can remove redundancies. They can add logic layer. They can make an English website work in 20 different languages just with one click or with one prompt. And there's a lot more that we are going to be doing as part of, we're part of the Google Accelerator. We were showcased at Google I/O very recently. LLMs, we're just starting to scratch the surface, but yeah, we've been very focused on LDMs, and if anyone in the audience is passionate about this topic, would love to talk to you guys, would love to have you contribute. We have a booth in the exhibition hall. We have some T-shirts, and we can also give you guys a demo. Thank you so much for the time.